The twin suns of Aurelia sank low across the crystalline skyline, bathing the towers in hues of lavender and gold that shimmered like living glass. Kellen, a human engineer assigned to the planet, stood beside his wife, Lysara, marveling at how her silver hair caught the fading light like flowing starlight. Her eyes sparkled in the gathering dusk, glimmering like two jewels that mirrored the constellations above. And he often thought she looked more celestial than the heavens themselves. Aurelia was known as a world of peace, where technology soared into the future, but culture favored harmony over war, a jewel of progress untouched by strife. The streets glowed with bioluminescent moss. Drones zipped gently overhead, delivering packages, and gardens hung suspended from sky bridges like cascades of emerald waterfalls. Life seemed eternal here, perfect and safe, until the whispers began circulating through media streams. Stories emerged of bizarre attacks, citizens staggering through markets with vacant eyes before mauling passers-by with unnatural strength. Authorities dismissed them at first as accidents or rare psychological breakdowns, urging calm while downplaying the strange reports. But every day, more incidents surfaced, rumors spreading faster than the officials could bury them. Tales of victims rising again after death. Lysara brushed off Kellen's concerns, but he noticed how her hand clutched his tighter every evening, when the whispers grew too loud to ignore. The outbreak struck their district without warning, turning peaceful serenity into sudden horror. Kellen was setting dinner on the table when the first siren pierced the air, a shrill note rarely heard in the utopian city. Lysara rushed to the balcony, her glowing hair fanning in the night breeze as she looked down at neighbors pouring into the streets. At the far end of the avenue, a cluster of figures shambled forward, bodies jerking erratically, movements grotesque yet determined. Kellen's heart clenched when one lifted its head, revealing hollow eyes burning with a sickly green luminescence and a mouth smeared with black ichor. The creatures shuffled slowly at first, dragging their feet across polished stone streets, drawing frightened murmurs from onlookers. But the instant a child screamed, the nearest figure let out a guttural shriek and broke into a sprint that blurred the line between the living and the dead. The others followed suit, exploding into terrifying speed, their limbs pumping with monstrous hunger as they collided with the crowd. Screams erupted as bodies were torn down, blood spraying across glowing moss, painting a surreal nightmare over a world once pristine. Lysara's silver eyes widened in horror as she gripped Kellen's arm, and he knew they had only seconds to act. He grabbed his plasma cutter from the workbench, its hum activating as arcs of blue fire licked along its edge. Lysara seized the ceremonial blade mounted on their wall, an heirloom of her people, not meant for war, but sharp enough to matter now. Together, they rushed down the spiral stairwell as the district outside disintegrated into chaos, alarms blaring, while citizens scattered in terror. A staggering man with half his face torn away lurched toward them at the street level, but Kellen shoved him aside just as another monster pounced. Lysara's blade flashed silver, slicing the attacker across the throat, ichor spraying as the creature collapsed at her feet. The pair sprinted toward the nearest Magrail station, thinking only of escape as more screams split the night. But the station, once a symbol of efficient order, had already become a death trap as panicked crowds jammed against the gates, begging for transport. When a zombie infiltrated the masses, the ensuing carnage spread like wildfire, the shrieks echoing across the entire plaza. Kellen pulled Lazara away, his instincts screaming that the trains would never save them, only trap them with the horde. They veered instead into the subterranean service tunnels, damp walls glowing faintly with moss as the sounds of pursuit followed behind. Their footsteps echoed as they ran, the narrow corridors magnifying every sound, until Lysara stumbled on loose stone. Kellen caught her before she hit the ground, their eyes locking in a moment of raw vulnerability amid the nightmare. "You won't fall," he whispered fiercely, his voice trembling but resolute. "Not while I'm with you." Her silver hair brushed his face as she whispered back, "Then we live together. Kellen, whatever comes." They pressed forward, the intimacy of that vow burning brighter than the terror howling behind them. Emerging from the tunnels near the outskirts, they found smaller homes and gardens already ablaze, their peaceful neighborhood unrecognizable. Zombies wandered in slow clusters, moaning as they searched, their movements disjointed and eerie in the moonlight. For one fleeting instant, Kellen thought they could sneak past unnoticed, but the crunch of broken glass betrayed them. Dozens of glowing eyes turned toward them in unison, and with an ear-splitting shriek, the horde surged into a sprint. Kellen swung his plasma cutter in wide arcs, the weapon sizzling through flesh and bone, filling the air with a stench of charred rot. Lysara fought beside him, her ceremonial blade dancing like liquid silver in the glow of burning houses, every strike precise and strong. Her warrior's build moved with elegance and ferocity, and Kellen felt awe even amid the slaughter, captivated by her beauty in defiance of death. They fought as one, their rhythm born of love and survival, carving through monstrosities with unyielding determination. For every creature that fell, another took its place, pouring from alleys and broken doors like an endless tide. Kellen's muscles screamed, his arms shaking, but his will hardened each time he saw Lysara's eyes sparkle with determination. Side by side, they clawed their way toward the city's perimeter wall, where terrified survivors clawed at the gates in desperate attempts to flee. The gates themselves were already failing, buckling under the press of bodies and the pounding of monsters from within. Kellen spotted a maintenance hatch set in shadow, its lock broken and swinging open as if inviting them. He dragged Lazara through the opening just as the mob behind them surged, bodies colliding violently with the steel gate. They stumbled out into the plains beyond Aurelia, the air cool, crisp, and shockingly free of rot. Silence stretched across the empty field, broken only by the beating of their hearts and the distant roar of chaos behind them. Kellen dropped his weapon, his hands trembling uncontrollably, before pulling Lysara into his arms as if she were the only anchor left in existence. Her silver hair flowed around him like strands of living moonlight, her eyes glistening with unshed tears that reflected the twin suns now rising on the horizon. "We made it," she whispered breathlessly, her voice shaking but unbroken. "We're still alive." He kissed her with desperate passion, sealing the moment against the apocalypse, their love burning fiercer than the fires consuming their homes. They stood together on the plains, exhausted but alive, staring back at the city now consumed by flame and screams. Kellen knew survival would not come easily. The infection spread too fast, too far, and the wilderness held its own dangers. But with Lysara's hand in his, he felt a strength beyond reason, as though love itself was a weapon sharper than steel. Zombies could run, cities could fall, and worlds could burn, but their bond would not break under any horror. And so, as dawn bathed them in pale gold, they walked away from the burning city, bound for survival and the fragile hope of tomorrow.